all in. I'm a fan of the Jets. I'm a fan of the Jets. The Jets. The Jets. Why this team? The Jets. Ah, the Jets! The Jets!
Greetings to all. Welcome to 2022. Omicron is on the run, and away it went. But oops, there goes gravity, and here comes a new variant. Omaha, Corona, Hut 1, Hut 2, nothing infects the Super Bowl, and nothing stops football.
Racism, greed, trauma to brain and spine. And yet, I cannot look away. Heroes are dead. Science has their heads. Oh, is there no escape? From here, I need to know.
The World Cup being around, Stugotz, is going to make this weekend, this Thanksgiving weekend, have way too much sports in it. And over the last, it's weird, right, that you could bribe your way into a Winter World Cup, that you could just be so corrupt everywhere that doesn't even matter your human rights violations. You are going to, again, have a Winter World Cup, which is strange. But when you look at the World Cup and you look at American football, I don't think there's a whole lot of attention being paid to basketball. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about is the Golden State Warriors last night lost by damn near 50 points to the Pelicans. They have been terrible. Sub 500. Steph Curry scores 50 in a game. They lose by double digits. Steve Kerr has said, quote, "We're in the final stages. We know that. This could be the last year, maybe next to last." And I was surprised to hear him say that, because usually coaches are forever pushing. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about what's happening with them, because I assume most of us think that they'll be able to turn on some switch when it matters, because the regular season has rarely been less relevant than it is right now, when so many guys are sitting so much and taking so much time off that it doesn't appear that anyone's taking it very seriously.
We should point out that last night, that game you referenced, the Warriors were without Steph Curry, without Klay Thompson, without Draymond Green, without Looney. So they haven't been good on the road with those guys, but they were without those guys last night.
Yes, and they're sitting those guys sometimes to make the regular season be less relevant than it has ever been. But the thing that I wanted to ask you about is, we talked so much about everybody in sports wanting to win. And yet in that sport, for whatever the reason is, whether it was the Miami Heat's Big Three or Golden State enduring whatever the furnace is of welcoming Kevin Durant and then spitting him out, what is it about winning and achieving at that high a level that guys get fried? Now, this is happening at least in part because of age, but what do you imagine is happening in the pressure cooker when everyone says, man, when you win, it makes all the bumps go away, it feels so good to go to work, that along the path, some of these teams get tired of winning, like physically tired from what it takes to win basketball games. And Steve Kerr is comfortable saying, we know we're in the final stages of this. We can't win after this, after their owner has said they're light years ahead of everybody, after they plan to have the young people come in as the old people champions are still there to teach them.
Right.
They have all sorts of salary cap advantages. Do you have any theories on how it is that a group of people who are winning together in sports get to a point in that sport over the last few years where it'll combust in 3 or 4 years? Your guys will hate each other. It'll be the disease of me. You'll get to a point where everyone's fighting over the money or the credit, because I thought that winning was supposed to be the salve that you'd want to do it forever. That if Kevin Durant gets there and the sport is easy, why wouldn't you want to just do 10 years of that? We're going to crush everybody. And I got to wonder now in retrospect how much regret Kevin Durant has about what he did, given what's happened here.
Oh, I'm sure he lives with a ton of regret. It turns out, armed with hindsight, that it was a terrible decision to latch yourself to Kyrie Irving, to go to that franchise that no one cares about.
But you said it was a terrible decision to go there as well. And I did not have that. I did not have that entire scenario being something that would end quickly because the winning would be too overwhelming. I don't even understand legitimately how it is that it happens if you're conquering and crushing everyone, why it is anybody would get tired of that in sport.
I don't think they're tired of it. I think they're just old. I think what Steve Kerr is talking about is strictly age. Like, Draymond Green is getting up there in age. Klay Thompson's injured. He's not the player he used to be. Steph Curry is getting up there in age. I think it's an age thing more than anything else. I'm not saying those guys aren't tired of each other. I'm not saying there's not tension in that locker room. Draymond Green, are they going to pay me? They're going to pay him. Who are they going to pay? There's probably some of that. They're still 7-1 at home. I'm certain they're saying to themselves, we'll figure it out on the road eventually. We're fine. We've been down this road before. We can handle. They don't need a 1 seed anymore to make it to the NBA Finals, I believe. So I don't think it's anything about them being tired of winning. No one's ever tired of winning. I don't even think they're tired of each other. I think what Steve Kerr is talking about and seeing is, yeah, my guys aren't as good as they used to be.
You say they're not tired of each other, but Durant left because he was tired of each other, and Draymond started this season punching a teammate in the face.
True. Yeah.
Well, that is sort of the point, isn't it? The point is what you have to summon. And Draymond himself gave voice to in the first season that they were awful after Durant left and everyone got hurt and he was the only one out there. He basically said, I might retire rather than play games that don't matter. It's very difficult to find that level of care and intensity, and it's why Draymond does crazy shit all the time, because he sort of has to ratchet up the stakes in order to really feel like he can get that team going. So how do you ratchet up the stakes when you kind of know last year, particularly in the second half of the regular season, they weren't very good, it didn't really matter. They won the championship anyway. Everyone in that locker room knows when it comes time, we can win the championship. So why do we need to put all of our investment, excuse me, in a road game against New Orleans in November?
You guys also saw, you're making fun of...
that was quite the frog in the throat.
I mean...
Yeah, you want some honey there?
Yeah.
Like Kermit.
Mm-hmm.
Whittingham, those hurt Whittingham more than they hurt everyone else, right?
I did a lot of talking yesterday. We did 40 minutes from a bar.
You guys did half time.
Yeah, we did halftime as well.
But Dan's asking, will that stay with you for a while? Like, what just happened?
I'm just going to go home and, like, what happened? What's gone wrong? How do I need to take care of myself more during this World Cup? We're 3 days into it.
So not what Zach Wilson did.
Correct.
Tune into Morally Abhorrent, where you're going to talk for another 40 minutes following today's show.
Stugotz, one of the things that does end up happening here, because you're talking about Clay being older and injured, there was some real life wisdom in what he said a couple of days ago. Quote, "I don't care anymore. I really let the trolls get to me." It would stand to reason, Stugotz, if social media is addictive, if people on social media, especially young people on social media, are getting more and more depressed, and if human nature is to notice the one person saying the shitty thing instead of the 10 applauding you, that in today's climate, whether it's Kevin Durant getting embittered or Klay Thompson getting rattled by trolls, it would stand to reason that whatever the furnace has been before, when you couldn't actually feel the fans or the trolls reaching out to remind you, hey, if your confidence is slightly shaken and if you have doubt for the first time, here's some more lighter fluid to put that out with.
I've got some more for you.
Body betraying you? Feel less confident than you used to? Mental strength in tatters because you've had 2 terrible injuries? Here's this egg to tell you that you're shitty on social media. And also, the egg I'm referring to is Charles Barkley. He's shaped like an egg. We can agree on that.
Round mound of rebounds.
Can we not?
Yeah.
Put it on the poll at LeBatard Show. Is Charles Barkley someone who looks like an egg?
Even the notion that we're doing What's Wrong with the Warriors in November, 18 games into the season. They've got to be going, really, guys? We just won a championship. We've won 4 in the last 9 years. We can't have a bad 18-game stretch to start a completely and utterly meaningless regular season.
I mean, this is really bad on the road. It's like 1-9 now on the road when those guys are playing. Last night they didn't play, but for the most part they are playing.
Is there any evidence that that's like a real problem?
No, I think I'm with you. I think what the Warriors are saying is, hey, the Kings, really? We'll beat them in a best of 7. The Clippers, the Jazz, the Suns, the Nuggets. We'll beat any of those teams in a best of 7.
Well, thank you for bringing up the Kings, because it brings me to something
they can score with anyone, Dano.
That happens in sports in a way that is amusing. The Kings have now won 6 straight basketball games.
Yep.
But because they play in Sacramento, that news takes about 7 to 8 weeks to get to people. And
8 of 10, by the way.
It's taken a minute for people. How long has it been since the Sacramento Kings won 6 straight games? Did Mike Bibby play on that team? Was Peja Stojakovic on that team?
It had to be Bibby, Chris Webber. It had to be that group. Yes. There's no way they've won 6 games anytime in the last 15 years.
Was Vlade Divac on that team?
So actually, this has been tweeted out. So it's been since January of 2005. The starting lineup for that team was Mike Bibby, Coutinho Mobley.
Oh, Coutinho, professional getter of buckets right there.
That's a classic mid-2000s basketball player.
Yeah.
Peja Stojakovic, Chris Webber, and Brad Miller. Wow. That was the starting
Brad
5.
Miller.
What a time.
Amazing.
Brad Miller, the one white player that you could always point to about the wardrobe policy in the NBA.
I'm expecting when I see Coutinho Mobley in Ice Cube's league, I'm always expecting him to get 40 because he's a professional getter of buckets, even though he's bloated and he's dyeing his hair now and he's
doesn't matter.
If not,
just drilling 18-footers with no problem.
Put it on the poll, please, Guillermo, at LeBatard Show. Does news about Sacramento basketball take 7 or 8 weeks to get to the rest of the country?
I love the remaining names on this 04-05 Sacramento Kings team that went 50-32.
Oh, give them to me.
Off their bench, Greg Ostertag.
Oh, my God, Tag.
On the bench, Eddie House, Bobby Jackson, Darius Sangalia, Corliss Williamson.
Ah, yes. Didn't he have a nickname? I think he had a nickname. I think Corliss Williamson had a Big Nasty nickname, something like that.
I think you're right. Yeah, Big Nasty.
Was Lawrence Funderburk on this?
Funderburk. What a great name.
Chris Cote just found this weekend, he just learned a stat that we had given when he wasn't in one day, which is that Justin Tucker, the Ravens kicker, that is a cheat code that Mike Ryan says we're going to look back years from now. And as we talk about the Baltimore Ravens being great no matter who their players were, we're going to realize that we have underestimated the importance in a sport where so many games are won by 1, 2, and 3 points of having a kicker who has made 65 straight field goals in the fourth quarter and overtime.
It's amazing. It's the first ballot Hall of Famer.
It doesn't even make sense.
Next best is 14.
He truly won't be appreciated, I think, fully until he's gone. Especially by that fan base. I'm sure that fan base loves Justin Tucker, and they don't think that they can possibly love him more. Trust me, they will once he's gone. Because it's special. Daniel Carlson is also a really good kicker, kind of a cheat code, and pales in comparison to 14. I would say Daniel Carlson's the second best at that job in the NFL. He's got 14.
That position, we've talked about this before, field goal kicking, has nothing in sports has gotten better. It's a ridiculous way to say it, but more better since the 60s than the accuracy of field goal kickers. And I saw Brett Maher made 2 60-yarders this weekend.
Easily.
2 60-yarders. He's now made four total 60-yarders.
I'll check it. He made 2 in one game, which is ridiculous.
Remember when someone attempting a 60-yarder would be a cause for excitement? You would get at the edge of your seat because you were about to witness history.
They break into programming.
I'm not about to talk about kickers the way that we talk about home runs in baseball and the home run records falling in the late 90s, but it is pretty wild that something like Justin Tucker is excelling at the clip that they are.
I don't like about the sport that you can get within 40 yards of the end zone and score points.
Jets still have their problems, though.
Yeah. Well, so did the Patriots. I mean, they had 2 field goal attempts, Nick Folk, that didn't go through because of the wind, and they still lost. If Nick Folk was playing quarterback for the Jets that day, they would have won the game. I mean, I'm convinced of that. Same with Tucker. I'm trying to find this thing on Brett Maher, is it? He's 7 of 9 from 50+, but I don't have anything on how many 60-yard field goals.
There isn't even a field on like Football Reference for 60+.
It's not there yet. Yeah.
Because normally 50+ is as far as they'll go. I'm with you. I'm having a hard time finding how many 60-yard field goals that he's making. It's not readily available on the internet.
He didn't make 2 this weekend. He made 1, and then for some reason there was a late review on something, and he just did it again right after that. I don't think he had 2 on the stat sheet, but he did make 2 while we were watching.
While we keep looking up these kicker stats because I'm totally enthralled by it, I would like to revisit the Jets quarterback thing because you cracked open the door a little bit. It became the topic du jour, and it seems to me, given Salah's press conference, did Zach Wilson possibly lose his job because of how he answered that question in the press conference? Because if he doesn't show that attitude and it doesn't go over like a dead fish in the locker room, I'm pretty sure they just trot him back out
Let's
there.
play that sound again for people because accountability is very important at that position. And coaches, I told you, Stugotz, earlier in the show, I mean, Robert Griffin talked for a full 4 minutes yesterday about Colt McCoy's leadership skills, which had next to nothing to do with anything that happened in that game. Can he play quarterback is the question, not how does he behave outside of the huddle. How does he behave?
led them to a 28-point loss.
That's correct. Led them with much attention to detail and leadership. He scored 10 points and lost to Jimmy Garoppolo at home by 4 touchdowns. But here is Zach Wilson, and Stugotz was telling you that Robert Saleh is very punctual and was 2 hours late.
Yes.
to his press conference because he was just thinking of how to break the news about being non-committal when reporters asked him, what are you doing at quarterback this week?
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
What is your best guess? I can't help but really enjoy whenever the PR guy makes an appearance in the background with a thank you to everybody when someone has said the wrong thing.
And they have to keep such a poker face whenever things are going wrong. That guy inside is going, oh, shit. But he's got to be like, all right, that's enough for today's press conference.
Time to wrap.
Time to wrap. We'll talk to you guys later.
Is Mike right, though, Stugotz, that Zach Wilson lost his job with a syllable?
Well, he hasn't lost his job yet. He said that he might be the starter moving forward. He left the door open, which he should because they're trying to win that division. I think the combination of bad play, obviously, he's been really, really bad, combined with that answer where it's so easy if you're the quarterback to go up there and say, you know what, on me. On me. When we win, it's them. When we lose, it's on me. That's all you have to say. And the locker room buys into it, and I'm not certain why he didn't say that. He should have said that. But I think more importantly, what's troubling Robert Saleh is he's playing lousy. He's played, like last Sunday, he was the worst quarterback in the NFL.
But you yourself said the combination. I understand that the bad play means that he's not getting asked that question. But I think if he just does a good teammate thing, takes responsibility, is accountable, and says something that would fly within that locker room, certainly better than his play, that would go a long way for him. I think his attitude there and how he dismissed it tells you a lot.
I think there's something, maybe you're right, Mike, but I think the players in that locker room, teams kind of police themselves, right? And I think they go to Robert Saleh and say, listen, just get us 14 points a game. We'll probably win most of those games. Well, get us 17, get us 14, get us 20. Zach can't get there, and then he doesn't take responsibility. He's not accountable after the game. Of course he let the defense down. The entire team let the defense down. But the quarterback, as leader of the team, who has a C on his chest, needs to say, hey, and he was never a captain in college, by the way, but he's the captain of the New York Jets. He needs to say, hey, that game was on me. I'll do better next time.
Remember how they handled the Elijah Moore thing? Elijah Moore demanded a trade after not being targeted in a game. And the locker room kind of policed it. He was suspended. He did not dress for the next game.
Arrogance is often a mask for insecurity. Bravado is often something that men in sports use as a shield. If you're as incompetent as Zach Wilson was in that game, where your measurements were by inches, where Bill Belichick confused you, where you looked incompetent and couldn't get the ball over your own 35-yard line, do you not think that a young man who hasn't played very much might go into a tabloidy city press conference and lean into, I'm not scared, not me, confidence is fine? Wherever the doubt is.
He could say all of that, Dan, and still say, this week was on me.
Agreed, Stugotz.
I'll be better.
Stugotz, I'm not saying that he handled it well. He did not. That is not what you need from a leader publicly. I'm talking about the human being who is at the center of that particular spectacle. Now the Jets suddenly have expectations. You're a high draft pick. You look terrible. Those jobs are hard to come by, and Baker Mayfield can tell you can lose your career really quickly. And you're in the center of that. And you want to, as a young person, Stugotz, because it's not just playing the position that you have to learn.
Show that you're confident. Lean into it.
I don't even know that you have to show that you're confident. I'm telling you that looked like a mask to me, that he was asked a question he was not prepared for, just like the entire game had questions he was not prepared for. And I imagine it's hard to sleep at night. I imagine people who care deeply and fail like that in a stadium full of people, all they've got at the end of the day is the words they're saying at a press conference. And my guess is he's trying to hide because he doesn't want to be exposed anymore as a fraud who doesn't have the confidence to play that position. And so what does he do? He just puts on that mask and loses his job, possibly.
There is a mask being put on, but I do think he was prepared for the question. He was pretty swift and definitive with his answer. He didn't really take a lot of time to think of just no. I think he went into that a little bit defensive. Obviously, he knows he didn't play well in there, and he knew the questions that he was going to face, and maybe that was just an emotional reaction to a question. If he could do it over again, I bet you he would.
But he probably also doesn't respond to blame very well. I imagine, you talk all the time about athletes where you sort of, the mirror is the last thing that is going to be looked at in these situations. You start blaming others, you start blaming coaches, you start blaming teammates, start blaming all the things around you. Why can't we find a solution against Bill Belichick's defense? Zach Wilson has been a disaster against the New England Patriots. They've not been able to figure out a way to execute their offense in a normal way against Bill Belichick defenses, and he's probably wondering, well, this can't just be my fault, can it?
But it is his fault. But you're right. Like, I'm certain what he's thinking is, hey, my offensive line stinks. Like, hey, I didn't tell special teams to punt the ball right down the middle of the field to the guy when they were supposed to punt it out of bounds. Like, I didn't tell them to do that. I wasn't out there on special teams. I wasn't a gunner on the punt coverage team trying to tackle the punt returner. I'm certain he feels like there's plenty of blame to go around. But when you're the quarterback and you're the captain and you're the second overall pick, okay, in that city especially, you got to take the blame. You just have to take it's on me. Let's move on to the next game. I mean, I played poorly. On to the next game. I'll do better.
It sounds like the great leadership thing to do, right? But also waking up in the morning to a New York Post headline, Wilson, the loss was my fault. It's got to be a pretty shitty thing to wake up to.
Is this any better? Like what he's fallen into, is it any better?
It's not any better. Like,
right.
Because we like the leadership thing rather than the, seemingly, pretentious, spoiled quarterback that has had everything in his life, and now he's the one that it's my fault now, and so it makes him even more unlikable.
Can we examine for a second, because Stugotz is right on the correct way to handle that, but can we please imagine Stugotz as the quarterback in this position, whether you think he'll go out there? Stugotz, who is so very good and very bad about lying, would have such a hard time lying just to make things look different than they are. Imagine Stugotz getting up at a press conference as the Jets quarterback after playing that game. 100% on me,
We would have
guys.
won if I played quarterback on Sunday.
100% on me, guys. When does that ever get said by Stugotz?
It gets said,
Why am I laughing?
It gets said disingenuously all the time by that position. I think everyone understands that you answer that question disingenuously.
Right, exactly.
It still buys you something in that locker room.
Yes.
Every reporter in there was surprised that he didn't lie to their face.
Because
we're actively encouraging lying. Please lie to me.
Yes,
bullshit
lie
me.
to me. Tell me.
Why didn't you bullshit me?
Yes. Because I'm certain, like, if Zach, by not taking accountability for it, he is basically telling you, well, who else is there to blame? It's not the defense. It's the offensive line. Like that, I mean, he committed a cardinal sin during that press conference.
Well, he didn't say
Let's stop talking about this
He
offensive.
essentially said that.
Please, let's stop talking about
Well,
this
he's
offensive
not the
line.
reason. Who is? I mean,
Let's not. They're middle of the pack in pass blocking.
Right.
This is not the David Carr Texans.
I want to talk about that reporter going home at night and telling everyone in his family, it worked.
I got him.
I asked the question, and this young quarterback was too dumb to just bullshit me to my face. I got the answer I wanted, and now I'm going to get a quarterback change. I've got a legitimate quarterback controversy. I've shaken the Jets at their core just because this kid couldn't just bullshit me.
Robert Saleh was 2 hours late.
2 hours late. I made him do 2 hours of extra work.
The film that he was watching was a press conference, slowing down his no.
Honey, that question never works. I've been asking it in this market for 40 years. Or my name's not John Heyman. I know he covers baseball. I just imagine that everyone in the Jets press conference, they've been
It's
there
Manish Mehta.
since Herm Edwards was
Or
there.
my name isn't Rich Cimini.
It never works. They trapped the gullible pretty boy. It'll never work again.
They've been waiting for him forever.
The only people that get asked questions like that are the Jets quarterback and the British Prime Minister. Those are the only two people that get asked questions like that.
Sweeney Murdy pumps his fists. I got him.
The slow report, Chris Cote finally got around to Top Gun.
What?
Holy shit, was that movie good?
The one from the 80s?
Well, I actually watched that one when this Top Gun came out because I was like, I got to watch the first one. And I finally, on the plane back from Toronto, watched it on a sad little 8-inch screen, and it was
As Tom Cruise intended, by the way.
Dude, it was so good.
They go out of their way to tell you watch it on the biggest screen possible.
I know, but I'm telling you,
That's why I haven't seen it.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it on that little screen, even with all the hype. And I am the king of when a movie is hyped up to me, it was good, but I asked I've done that for every movie of all time. If a movie's hyped, this lived up to the hype. So good, man.
I have not yet seen it because I don't believe all of you.
I'm telling you, Dan, please watch it.
I
don't mean the fight scenes, the love making. The love making. I meant like the love story.
There was a love.
It was just from start to finish, just a good movie.
I think the love scene was just Tom Cruise wakes up and he's in jeans in bed, right?
Nah, climbing down it's just good. I liked it, man.
When I say I don't believe you on this, I'm not talking to this room. I'm talking to every single opinion of every person who has watched this movie. How is it possible that I cannot get a dissenting opinion from anybody on this movie?
Do you think everyone in the world got together and like, let's prank Dan?
But also, I mean, big budget sequel from a movie from the 80s seems like a thing that you'd be skeptical of naturally.
I did not understand. I'm legitimately, when you talk about critics being wrong and Tom Cruise getting to win the way very few people in their late 50s get to win and reinvent themselves, I would have advised Tom Cruise that it's a bad idea to remake that movie, even understanding how much people love their nostalgia, because you're not likely to make it as well. To have the consensus opinion be from everyone except Adnan Virk, and Adnan is probably objecting to it, at least in part, because he likes thespians.
He just hates Tom Cruise because of all
Right.
He comes into it with the Scientology bias.
Right. I texted, I was like, heckling him, like, it's your bias here. It was a good movie. You're letting your bias affect you because it was really good.
He can't separate what it is that he's watching from Scientology?
If you ask him, he'll just start criticizing the movie. He finds holes in it, but I think that it's his hate for Tom Cruise that is, forcing that.
A bias for Tom Cruise that is born of his love of Scientology?
Right. He just thinks he thinks he's despicable.
Well, yeah, specifically, what is it, the documentary, like Going Clear? Going Clear, where it's sort of exposed.
Totally shaped his opinion. And I think it did for a lot of people.
On whether or not you can enjoy fighter pilot scenes? The movie did pretty well for all of the people who were objecting to his Scientology undercurrents.
Sometimes people can separate art from artists. Sometimes people can't.
Well, it seems like most people can.
When it comes to Tom Cruise, yeah.
And the World Cup.
Yeah. There's hypocrisies everywhere if you look hard enough.
It's getting harder and harder to remain consistent in your moralities with the choices you're making.
Right, and it's also a lot easier to know where your hypocrisies lie.
It's
because
why
people
I
are
have
so
none.
helpful in pointing them out.
I have an idea, though, Dan. You haven't watched it yet? I'm thinking maybe when we do the Grid of Death thing and I come over and sleep at your house and we watch it.
There you go.
Huh?
You could make the popcorn, Dan.
Me, you, and V.
One night for all.
An 8-inch screen is what you watched it on, Chris? Were you watching it? How
8 inches, 6 inches, who knows?
But it didn't alter the experience for you at all that you're watching that giant of a movie on such a tiny screen on an airplane?
I got lost in the this guy who's over here rattling me. I got lost in that movie. I got lost in that movie. I was watching it on a movie like
like on the headrest.
I don't know
in
why.
your mind it was on the big screen.
You know how you get drunker faster on a plane because of whatever? I think you're more emotional too. I was weeping at the end of that thing. I don't want to spoil it, whether good or bad. I got so emotional at the end.
How long was the movie?
Like 2 and change, over 2 hours.
You know what I hate? I hate when they have movies available on flights that are longer than the flight. And then I can't track it down. I feel like, and look, I don't want to make things difficult for, the airline industry or whatever, but actually I do, because they charge you an arm and a leg for everything. Yeah. How about only make movies available that are duration of my flight? Like, don't make a 4-hour movie available for me. You know when that happened to me? What was that Will Smith movie that was about like the numbers, and it was in New Orleans, and it had to do with like rigging things?
Oh yeah, the gambling.
The gambling one. Yeah.
Is it the one where he sort of had access to more brain power?
No.
Focus? It wasn't Focus?
It might have been.
It might have been. Yeah, so I started watching that movie on a flight, and then it landed, and I had bought the like pass to watch a movie on that thing. So I'm like, I have like 6 minutes left. Like now everything's wrapping up. So I was in a terminal trying to watch the end of this movie before I was picking up my luggage that was like checked for the first time ever. And I couldn't because I wasn't on an American flight. And then I couldn't find that movie anywhere for months. So I was like, how the hell does this movie end? I don't like that they have movies that are longer than the flights.
I was so happy after this movie. I got up. Roy was like 7 rows behind me or a couple rows behind me. I got up and I just walked over to him. I just watched Top Gun.
I was 1 row behind you.
Whatever. I just had to tell him.
You
I
had to
stood
talk
up,
to somebody.
I stood up.
Right, I understand.
stood up and
Yeah.
I was just like, Roy, he couldn't have cared less. He was like editing something. He's like, what? I don't care. Go back to your seat. But I was just like, I saw it and it was great.
Were you trying to hide from others that you had tears in your eyes?
No. I was happy. It was just, like I said, I don't want to spoil the movie. So I don't want to like give away whether I was happy or sad, but it was just, no, I was not embarrassed. And I was, very emotional.
Yeah, the movie was Focus, which whenever Dan's father said that word, I always perk up, worried.
That and
Focus.
that and beaches.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you're telling me that you were on, because this does happen on airplanes. I know we surprise people every time we tell them this. You are more likely to be emotional on an airplane because of whatever it is that atmospheric conditions do to you at 30,000 feet. You got up, or you started crying at the end of the movie, and you weren't trying to conceal that from the people around you who aren't watching the movie?
I wasn't like, blubbering. It was more just like moved emotionally, could feel my eyes watering. And I was just like, wow, I don't often get like this. I didn't know if it was because of the plane or because of just how much I love the movie. I'm telling you, I haven't felt this way after a movie in a long time. I generally just like watch movies and I'm like, yeah, it was good. It was good. But this one, I was just like, how was it this good? I was just amazed that after all the hype, it actually lived up, and it was just amazing.
And I'm sure what you were looking for is just sort of like someone to acknowledge, like, did you see this with me? That's one of the cool moments on planes when they offer like live television. I watched the end of last year's Formula One season on a plane.
You look at all the other seats.
I was looking around.
Yeah.
I was like sort of peeking on it. Did anyone else see this? And there was a guy a row behind me who was losing his shit. And it was a great moment. Amin asked us last week, a moment you had with a stranger. That was one was like, you saw, holy shit. And you just sort of like do all this just with eye contact. That's all Chris was looking for. Yeah. One person to look at him and go, oh, I experienced that too.
And he went to Roy.
Yeah.
And he got nothing.
Gave me nothing. He was just like, why are you over here?
Roy strikes me as the person that plays games, like on the back of the screen. Like you're like, why is there games here? Who does that?
There were no games on the flight, unfortunately.
What, like a game of Tetris or the trivia game? You guys ever play the trivia game in the back of an Uber or a Lyft? That's a great one where they have the tablet and it's sort of a race. It's 60 seconds and you try to answer, and for whatever reason you lose the plot with 7 seconds to go because the driver you cut someone off and there's a bump or something and you forget like what a lemur is. And you're just trying to get 18 correct answers in a minute so you can see your name at the top of the leaderboard for the day. What a game!
Were you in Cash Cab?
No, I've had 2 or 3. Seems to come standard with some Lyfts and some Ubers where there's like a little tablet, they plug it in the back, and it sort of hangs from the passenger side headrest, and you can sort of play like this trivia game, but you have to watch like a minute of ads in between. So in the minute, all right, like you're sort of trying to get yourself into this mental shape for 40 minutes while sitting in a car to answer 18 questions about what the capital of Oregon is as quickly as possible.
Do you seek out trivia games?
I do. I'm a little jealous of Chris Cote's trivia night, I have to be honest.
Roy, what is it that you actually do on planes to entertain yourself, or are you just playing your favorite game? None of your goddamn business.
Yeah, that is my favorite game, actually. No, I carry my laptop and try to edit, but my laptop's battery is down.
You're
so
either
I'm
playing
stuck.
none of your goddamn business or keep my name out your damn mouth.
Yeah. It's usually the former.
Whittingham, do me a favor and go sit in the penalty box.
Oh, my God.
Just to rest your voice because you've been talking too much for a couple of days.
Wow.
And I need you to just rest from the coughing, from the
2 minutes for talking.
Just 2 minutes. I need you to just go sit out there to rest because
I don't like this precedent.
I feel for you. Have you guys noticed, because I saw the report the other day, that airline seats have gotten smaller, that these airlines that continue to lose money and do everything poorly and try to gouge you with Wi-Fi and everything else, and they give you for your gouged prices not even a bag of pretzels anymore. Have you noticed? I had not noticed. People are getting bigger and airline seats are getting smaller. And I did not notice that they did that without telling us. That I thought it was already sardini enough, unpleasant enough, but that they ran this scam, and I'm seeing the report for the first time last week that they're trying to save yet more money by making airplane seats smaller when I don't know how that helps. I thought they'd crammed as many seats into there as you're already plenty on top. You're already dreading having a 350-pound person next to you or in the middle seat.
There's one airliner that's considering stadium seating. I saw an article written on it. I hope I wasn't fooled by the internet, but you basically do have someone quite literally on top of you. Their chair is above yours, and your legs kind of tuck underneath them fully as your body is below them.
I mean, that would make it difficult for the people to roll the carts down the aisle, wouldn't it? Stadium seating?
Yeah, no, they're still in the same rows. The aisles still exist. They're just stacked on top of another.
I mean, Dan, it's kind of like, listen, once you're on the airplane, they've got you there. So it doesn't matter how big the seat is, you know? It's just one of those things. It's like you're in a stadium. Once they have you in the stadium, you're going to pay $15 for the hot dog because you have no other choice. You can't bring food with you. So once you're there, yes, I have noticed the seats are smaller, but what am I going to do about it? I'm already on your plane. I need to get from point A to point B, so I have to sit in the small seat, and I do.
I don't like the deception in it, though. I'm more.
Tell me up front.
I'm more bothered by the fact that I'm reading it as if it's an expose, as if it's an investigative report last week, than having it volunteered the way.
Just come clean.
Usually when I'm buying something that costs the same as it's always cost or more than it has cost in the past, usually I know what I'm getting and I get the information. Hey, this is less than you used to get.
It feels like the cereal boxes and the potato chip bags are getting smaller. This is the same thing, but the prices are still going higher.
Yeah.
I don't know if I expect honesty from the airlines. I do kind of expect to be gouged.
Dan, we're debating back here when's the last time Dan sat middle on an airplane. Yeah. We're thinking it started with a 19.
Your seats are just fine, is what they're saying.
Yeah, mine are fine. I was just trying to be a man of the people.
2.
Mike Ryan, would you be kind enough, please, to get ready for me what Chris Cote is referring to simply as that toenail sound? Chris Cote has been, I think, he's gotten to the point where he's yelling at me about sound from the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote. For those of you who do not know some of the backstory here, Greg Cote is rotten from head to toe. And the toenail on the great toenail on one of his feet went from yellow to green to black to falling off. It will be featured at Moss Miami. I'm telling you, I'm promising you that Moss Miami will be bigger and better than ever. The budget has been 3 or 4 times as large as it's ever been. And at the center of it is Greg Cote's black toenail. And the sound from the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote. You're promising me, Chris, that it's great, good? Why are you yelling at me that this is sound that we have to play about your father's disgusting toenail?
It's unique, I'd say. This guy, Dr. David Covington, he's an anatomy, physiology, biology professor at Cape Fear Community College in Wilmington, North Carolina. So
this guy's at the top of your head.
This guy's legit, okay? We call him Dr. Toenail. But he's into this. Like, he legitimately, he's a scientist. He fancies himself. Let's do things that have never been done before. So somehow he started frying human nails, and they turn into pork rinds. So he...
Well, they don't turn into pork rinds.
Well,
they're nails.
They turn into what look like pork rinds, and he says they taste good. And so now he's gotten to the point where it's like, I need nails. I don't have enough nails on my body to do what I want to do. So he's gone to nail salons, like begging for their scraps. And here's in the sound. This is him on his quest to improve. He wants to improve science.
This sounds like a crazy person.
But I'm just listen to him.
With all due respect to crazy people.
It's Dr. Covington.
This is his quest to just gather as much nails as he possibly can.
I approached a couple of home health care nurses I knew. I went to several nail shops. I said, illegal for us to give you any body parts.
Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't know that.
Well, then one day I'm driving down the road. It's about 5 a.m. I see a recently run over deer. So I stopped by the side of the road and I cut off his feet, figuring, a hoof is a toenail.
What?
And I got him home and I shucked the toenail off of the hoof. It looked a lot like yours, sir.
That's an Adam McKay character, yeah?
He cut off a deer foot.
Yeah, he had me until then.
Really? Dude, I'm telling you, this guy is legit.
Going.
He's on YouTube. This guy makes YouTube videos.
That makes it legit,
No,
Dan.
he shares it with his students. Like, this guy is a legit professor at a college. This is not an Adam McKay character.
Put it on the poll, please, Guillermo, at LeBatard Show.
You said he was from Cape Fear University. I don't know. This one has all the
Dr.
makings.
David Covington.
Dave Co.
At LeBatard Show. Is it possible for a person going into salons and asking for human nails to be legit, to be described as legit? I don't know who you will let treat you if that person who sounds that way and has a YouTube channel and is turning, again, toenails into pork rinds. I don't know how easy it would be to fool you with any doctor's resume if that's what you're telling me is legit.
What gets buried there is him saying my dad's toenail looks just like the deer's toenail. He goes, it looks just like yours, sir.
Well, what also gets buried there is the visual of some dude happening upon a deer, and you're driving past the guy.
Does he have a saw? Does he have like a saw?
He's bone sawing off a deer's foot so that...
Is that legal?
That's just
I
my
guess
doctor.
if the deer's dead, he can,
Here's the thing about that.
The line in legality is you can't get used toenails, but you can cut off any deer's foot you find, apparently.
I want you guys to understand how profoundly odd it is to have a guy on the side of the road stop to cut off a deer's hooves, and then things get weird. When he decides he's going to turn them into pork rinds because that's what he does with nails.
I can honestly say Greg Cote's podcast is covering new ground.
That's what I said. I was like, I love that we're doing something here that has never been done. He was like, at one point he said the sentence, my house still smells like fried toenails. And my dad was like, wow, that sentence has never been said before.
Put it on the poll, Guillermo.
Groundbreaking,
Has your house ever smelled like fried toenails? Chris Cote has another suggestion for Moss, and I remind you again, mosslebatard.com is where you go. We are spending a ton of money on this thing, and you're going to have some major FOMO if you're someone who listens to this show or watches this show and aren't a part of what it is that's happening here, because it's going to be much bigger than the other ones that we have done. But you have this conversation notwithstanding, you have another suggestion for Moss Miami.
Well, somebody on Twitter suggested that we have a complaint booth where we all take turns sitting at a booth and people get in line and just complain about the show. I think that's a little annoying, so maybe we make a jar or one of those, just like write down your complaint, drop it in a little box, little complaint box, and then maybe we read them on air the week after, see what people are complaining about. I think it could be a funny content idea.
I don't know what your experience is at Moss, but I was pretty sure we had that. Is every time I shook somebody's hand. So I'm glad if you want to consolidate it all into one area,
Right,
make
just-
my life easier.
Just greet people. They're not shy.
We found Dr. Covington on Rate My Professor. 2.9 out of 5. I signed up for Mr. Covington my fall semester of 2021 and absolutely hated the class. He was the only professor to not use a textbook and would make up his own notes, and his notes did not go along with his quizzes at all.
That's one bad apple. Come on, don't paint him like that.
2.9 was higher than I expected. I got to be honest.
It seems if you have 5 apples, 2 of them are going to be bad.
We're going to go to the bucket of death in a second here, but we've arrived at a very strange place when Chris Whittingham seems to be legitimately offended that the Dolphins are only a 12.5-point favorite against the Texans.
Man, I heard conversation. Oh, this one. I mean, if it weren't the Dolphins, if it were the Chiefs at home against what is the Chiefs home against the Texans? 15.5,
Something
16.
like that. Yeah.
It's a 3-score spread.
To your point, the Chiefs are at home this week against the Rams, and they're a 14.5-point favorite. So think about what that would be with the Texans.
Bryce
No
Perkins.
Stafford, though. I mean,
No Cup, no Stafford.
Right.
Right. I mean, the Rams are a bit of a disaster right now. But if they were playing the Texans at home, they'd be 17-point favorites. Why don't the Dolphins get that sort of respect?
The Dolphins are not as good as the Chiefs.
I mean, their offense has been for the last 3 weeks. It's been absolutely incredible. The Dolphins should merit, at the very least, a 2-touchdown spread against the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 1-8-1. I saw they're thinking about a quarterback change, which I think would see them start Kyle Allen at quarterback. Kyle Allen is going to be less than a 2-touchdown underdog to this Dolphins team. And the sort of anger that I've worked up about this is sort of like, wait a second. I think the Dolphins should be 2-touchdown favorites at home. I was happy if they were just favorites at home, period, for the last 10 years. How far have I come as a Dolphins fan where I'm quibbling about the size of the spread because I just assume that the Dolphins start the game with 31 points on the board, which is absurd.
So it seems like a good bet. You're getting a good price,
Yes,
according to you. Yes.
I will be betting the Dolphins minus 12.5 this week against the Texans. That is the worst rush defense in the league. Since acquiring Jeff Wilson, the Dolphins have been fantastic running the ball. I think they're going to win by at least 3 touchdowns on Sunday.
Buy it down to 12 just in case.
At half point.
I hate the half points, hooks.
I think I read that the last time the Dolphins were this favored against the Texans, they lost.
Yeah. You read that correctly.
Yeah. We actually have a pretty bad history against the Texans. For whatever reason,
bad matchup, yeah.
I remember an expansion Texans doing well against the Dolphins for the last 5 or 6 years.
Who's this we business?
I'm a Dolphins fan.
Billy?
It is debatable. I mean, the way you treated Tua early on is, and now you want 14-point spreads.
I think they're getting plenty of respect. By a quick glance, I think this is a top 5 spread of the NFL season so far.
Probably, yeah.
I am always scared of double-digit dogs covering. Anytime I ever think it's going to be a blowout in football, I'm wrong.
Anytime I bet on a double-digit favorite, the other team gets out to a 7-0 lead. And then all of a sudden, my spread is 19.
Even a 3-0 lead feels like
it's the worst feeling in the world when you're like 12 points is nothing. Shit, now I need 19 points.
Well, you can't say every time, right? Because just like last night, the Cardinals are up 3-0. You're like, I knew it.
I had the Niners, and I was like, God damn it. But then I put my daughter to sleep, and it was 7-3. I'm like, all right, we're back.
That does feel like it happens a lot. You bet the Giant favorite. You go into the game down 12.5-0, and then Jacoby Brissett marches right down the field because he's been practicing the same opening drive.
He's
all
great
week.
at the first drive, man. And then all of a sudden you're down 19.5 points. Yeah.
But you're like, all right, 3 touchdowns. We can do this. It's early.
I don't know what you guys would answer to the question of what is your single favorite thing about this NFL season, but I have a nominee that I was not expecting to be the nominee before the season started. Through 10 or 11 weeks, there is nothing in the sport that I enjoy more than how much Amazon is paying Al Michaels to hate the Thursday night game.
Despises him.
He's getting paid so much money to go on there and watch. I mean, basically, we've spent the last 5 weeks of Thursday night football just betting on the football to be total shit and enrage Al Michaels because it's going to be 9-3 at the half. We're always betting under 20 points at the half. And Al Michaels is not disguising the acid that he feels for his lot in life. He's thinking to himself, I believed in miracles. I'm somebody who shouted, do you believe in miracles? And now I've got to watch the Carolina Panthers again.
The only time that there was more animosity that jumped off the screen from Al Michaels was when he had to do the reads for La Brea Season 1 last year on Sunday Night Football and have to explain the concept of people traveling to the center of the earth being sent back to a prehistoric time. And he got more and more sarcastic as the year went on, where he's asking Chris, hey, how'd you like last week's episode of La Brea? And you know Chris didn't watch it. You know.
Did you guys enjoy last night how much Buck and Aikman struggled with Spanish while trying to pander to Mexico?
It's such an easy move. It's such an easy move. The Michaels thing, he's been doing that as well with the Prime Video shows that he has to plug, and like they always toss in like the very promotional line at the end, and Al Michaels sort of always like, wait, what is this? He always says it with this sneering tone.
Chloe Grace Moritz and The Peripheral.
He has stopped caring.
Not about his hair, though.
What a wonderful place to be in life that you could be. Is he making $17 million a year for one game a week, 17 weeks a season? And I'm assuming he doesn't have to work on Thanksgiving, right? Does Amazon have a Thanksgiving
No, I
game?
think they're off Thanksgiving, yeah.
And
$11 million for Michaels.
Jesus, to crap on his games.
I mean, next week he's got Bills Patriots, so although maybe is he going to crap on Mac Jones for 3 hours?
This is something that
I'd watch that.
If he were actually
crapping on it. Yeah.
Crapping like on his shoes.
Yeah. I'd pay crazy prices.
I haven't seen an announcer be paid that kind of money to have an active disdain for having to work one day a week in a way that can't even be concealed. It's not, I'm not the only one noticing it. Everyone is noticing that, and everyone is noticing how wonderful it is, because we were talking earlier about how we expect Zach Wilson to just bullshit us in the press conference. We expect the announcers to do it too. Just pretend. God almighty, Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan will sell you
the best.
He will sell you a package filled with camel feces and tell you that it's rainbows and gold.
He did with Jets Patriots.
Yep.
He gave you the energy for 59 minutes and 50 seconds and then got his just reward for providing the energy for 59 minutes and 50 seconds of truly awful football. He gets the punt return, the rare walk-off punt return.
He's so good. He is so good. He's good at the great games, and he is good at convincing you that the Texans-Carolina Panthers is a great game. He's so good. By the way, Chris Sims is doing this thing that he does. He watches film. And now he's trying, because he's kind of in the bag for Zach Wilson, he is pointing out on Twitter, at CSimsQB on Twitter, he is pointing out that much of what we saw on Sunday was not Zach Wilson's fault. I hate when he does that. He did it with Justin Fields. He said it was the coaching staff's fault. Receivers weren't open. I blasted them, and then Sims turned out to be right. They weren't utilizing him correctly. And he is now saying more rollouts for Zach Wilson. And which wide receivers did you want him to throw to on this particular play? Because none of them were open. I hate when he does that.
Well, Chris Sims, you could catch him on God Bless Football, and his analysis is usually very good. But, Stugotz, he's been, so far, really wrong on Zach Wilson. And this feels like a defense of his position, not seeing the film, just speaking ignorantly and with no information. But he's also been down on Tua. And has he walked that back?
Absolutely not.
No. Billy tries every single week, and he is unwilling to walk it back.
He's the only one that has a pass that if he wants to finally flip, we'll welcome him to this side, but he refuses to accept our invitation to come on to the Tua bandwagon, and it's getting infuriating. It's borderline rude, to be honest with you. It's the second rudest thing. He said he was coming down here. I said, why don't you stay in my house? You can stay on my pull-out couch. And he said, no, thank you. I'd rather stay with Dan or Stugotz. I was like, you are a jerk, sir.
And Billy has his uniform. I mean, he brought his jersey.
Yeah, I have a jersey of him hanging in the office when we do it. I'm the only one in America that has a Chris Sims jersey.
But Dan, I'm telling you, he said the same things like Justin Fields. I said, is this a wrap on Fields? He's not good, right? This is like 5 weeks ago. And he said, no, they're not using Fields correctly. And he showed us why. And then they started using Fields the way he suggested they use Fields, and all of a sudden, he's a great quarterback. So
this is what I would say to you in the audience. Somebody can have an enormous amount of information, be really smart about their analysis of football, and not in any way be able to predict who will win on Sundays. Chris Sims has all over the place exceptional analysis. I don't know how he doesn't walk back the Tua thing. You can continue to give credit to the receivers if you want, but you're just entrenched in your position at this point because there is no disputing. You're looking at numbers empirically that have very little precedent in the history of the sport.
In fairness, what Sims is saying is Tua has gotten a lot better. He has said that. But he has fallen into the right system with the right coach and the right wide receivers, and he's utilizing those coaches and receiver and the entire offense. He's utilizing it perfectly, and he says a lot of quarterbacks with that coach, with those two wide receivers, with that offensive line, who I guess is playing pretty well, a lot of quarterbacks would have a lot of success in that scenario.
Okay, but he said that he wasn't very good. And now he's
great.
Unprecedented or borderline unprecedented things offensively. And this happens. It's a plague, Stugotz, in sports media coverage, where the people who do the analysis will bend over backward to be right, no matter how much new information makes an appearance. You just stick to your position.
It will be wide receivers, McDaniel's system, and the last shoe to drop is okay, too.
Well, there's always something, because like last week, early on, it was like, well, look, he has just Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Of course he can do it. And I'm like, well, what happened last week? He didn't really throw to them that much. Well, of course, they were covered. Everyone else was wide open, so he threw to everyone else. So, I mean, to get Stugotz's point, he's basically, like, his point now is he's not elite, and a lot of quarterbacks put in that position could do the exact same thing. And if you put someone, because he loves certain quarterbacks, he's like, oh, if you put this person on the Dolphins, they'd be unstoppable. But with Tua there, they're not right now.
Or else say put Tua on the Jets and tell me how good Tua would be on the Jets, to which I would say they would have won the game on Sunday. Like, they would have won that game on Sunday. They would have blown out the Patriots by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. He's a big Herbert guy, too. There's certain buttons, if you push him with Sims, they're going to get them all riled up. Tua's one of them. Herbert's another one.
But Dan is right. Like, you just want him to say, hey, I was wrong on that. It's okay. Like, I tell Sims all the time, it's okay to be wrong. Like, you're not going to nail it on every single quarterback.
I'm more interested, actually, though, in it, as I don't know how the audience experiences this. I'm guessing that the audience thinks an analyst often is only as good as his or her predictions on things, when you can have all of the information in the world at your disposal, and those games get decided so often by such small things that your analysis can even be right, and you can get the game wrong as the result.
I mean, in his defense, he's watching every game and breaking down film and sees things that we don't as not former NFL quarterbacks.
He's putting the time in.
Yeah.
That's what his largest point about quarterbacks, Dan, is if you're great, you'll be great in any situation. That Joe Burrow right away in Cincinnati, he was great. He didn't need Chase. He was good before Chase. He got great once they got Chase. And if you put, Joe Burrow and the Jets right now, they'd be a Super Bowl contender.
Okay, but that's,
put him down here in Miami, he wouldn't need Tariq Hill and wouldn't need Jalen Waddle.
You say that,
he'd be good with what they have.
I think Justin Herbert is great. He's thrown 34 touchdown passes to undrafted players. I think he's hurt right now. You're not great in every situation. There are mitigating factors all the time in how much you're going to win or lose.
I agree.
I mean, maybe Patrick Mahomes is great all the time.
Well, he's great with Tariq Hill. He's great without Tariq Hill. I think that's Sims's point.
Okay, but you're talking about a quarterback that's one of one.
Yes, you are.
Like you're talking okay, if that's going to be the comparison point, then yes, everyone fails to measure up to that. But what we've ended up doing with that position on the analysis is we've all got these very, very strong opinions. And there are so many factors that go into the measurements, including we don't know whether the doctor who got sued by Tyrod Taylor for messing up his ribs has done something to Justin Herbert that is injured and hidden from us because they lie to us all the time about how healthy these human beings are. I would say to you that a quarterback being great all the time, probably not if he's got issues with his body. Even Mahomes had issues when he had turf toe. Even Mahomes. There's so many things that we don't know when making the analysis on these people.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers has not looked good in this situation. So, I mean, I'm with you. I agree. I argue with Sims all the time about this. So,
is the Grim Reaper ready? The Grim Reaper is ready. We are ready to go back to the bucket of death here early in the week because we, like everyone else, have an easier mail-it-in week than most people. Why are you rolling your eyes, Billy?
You haven't seen the God Bless Football recording schedule for this week. Oh, boy.
We got a doozy today.
Most podcasts are off this week. Stugotz said, why don't we do 2 episodes this week?
I mean, we're God Bless Football. There are 3 games on Thursday, man. I mean, got to react to them.
You, Billy, are encouraging this Frankenstein monster.
I know.
Go ahead, Chris. Reach into the bucket.
It is so delightful that the Reaper smells like KFC. When he walks in, you just smell it. Oh, that fried chicken. Jeez. I want that cologne. I'd take that as a cologne.
Would you?
Fried. I feel like that is your cologne.
It's delicious. The Chiefs. That can't be bad.
They are a 14.5-point favorite against the Rams.
I'm going to live dangerously and put it back. I'm kidding. I'm keeping it.
Roy, you want to go ahead and reach in? They're the biggest favorite. They're the biggest favorite of the week.
All right. Thank you for your service for the 4th time this season.
Unbelievable, man.
No.
Amazing.
This is the most. Really? You're just throwing it back without even looking.
No.
That's disrespectful.
Roy.
I'm sorry to our troops.
Roy.
Swap helmet.
Oh, nice.
I gotta go back in. I'm missing the bucket here.
All right, so you keep the swap helmet
and the Denver Broncos.
And whoever. Oh, you got Russell Wilson. They are a 2.5-point favorite at the Panthers.
I think the Army and the Navy are off this week.
Army are away at UMass, which is the worst team in college football. They're 1-10.
Bad decision by Roy.
Roy, are you picking?
I have a swap helmet.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Are you picking for anybody, Roy? Are you picking for anybody else? We've got no Jessica here. We've got no Tony here.
No Greg.
I'll pick for Tony real fast. You want me to do that, Witty?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I'm picking for Tony. Let's do this. All right. Tony, Vikings.
The Vikings are a 3-point favorite at home against the Patriots.
Oh, Patriots stink. I'm keeping that.
Yeah, keep it. He's always talking about Kirk Cousins.
I'll pick for Greg.
Okay.
It appears Navy are on a bye.
That's what I'm saying,
big
man.
mistake.
Army Navy's next week.
Always a mistake.
The underdog helmet.
Oh, boy.
I'm gonna put it back on.
A reminder that Greg is currently on the golden helmet of life. Yeah, he swapped with Amin after the end of last week's
so put that
Grid of
back.
Death section, and Amin ended up with the Jets,
Which is a shame because Roy had the Dolphins in his hand, which is a 13-point favorite.
Well,
also, there was controversy last week because I was on the golden helmet, but Chris picked the Ravens for me, so I could have it carry over. But I'm going to be a good sport, and I'm going to pick a helmet regardless.
All right. Okay.
All right, I have the Rams. I'm going to put that back.
14.5-point dog at the Chiefs.
Yeah. Oh, I have the Colts. Which can't be any better.
Jeff Saturday.
Monday Night Football.
Favorites.
Take it.
Yeah, Monday Night
Steelers.
Football.
I'll take it.
I saw the promo for that, and it was Mike Tomlin's Steelers take on Jeff Saturday's Colts.
I mean, the game is on ESPN, so
I saw a graphic with Pat Fryermuth.
Did you?
Yeah, he was the player advertised. Pat Fryermuth.
That's all they got. I mean, who's picking for Smetty?
I will. The San Francisco 49ers. That's for me. I'll keep that.
Oh, that was delayed. That was suspicious
That
when he
was
announced
sketchy.
that. 9-point favorite.
I'll be the judge of this.
I always pick for myself first.
At home against the Saints.
All right, and the Arizona Cardinals are home underdogs to the Chargers. I'll put that back for Jessica.
4.5-point underdog they were.
And I picked the Golden Helmet of Life.
Oh, Jesus.
That's not picked so much.
You have to be here to get the golden helmet of life, I
Well,
feel like.
we also have a swap in play.
He no longer has the golden helmet of life.
The golden helmet of life. The golden helmet of life. The golden helmet of life.
The golden helmet of life.
Jessica now has the Broncos.
Well, why don't you wait and see what everyone else gets first?
Okay.
There's nothing better in the Kentucky Fried Chicken
TYFYS, then.
bucket of death other than that. Somebody
There could be a drumstick in there.
Somebody has alleged that the instant death is no longer in there because it hasn't been picked in so long that somebody here cheated and took it out. The Golden Helmet of Life has been selected like 7 times since the last instant death helmet. Go ahead, Mike. You select. You're selecting for just yourself. Everyone else has been selected for, correctly?
Yeah, just myself. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I believe they have the Cleveland Browns.
They're on the road at the Browns, a 3.5-point favorite on the road at the Browns.
I'm going to keep that.
It is Tuesday. We could have Greg Cote. Someone could pick for Greg if we wanted to do that.
Okay.
We
Mike,
just
you'll be
determined
down.
he has the Golden Helmet of Life.
Mike, you'll be down
I
7-0.
thought it was done.
Yeah.
You'll be down 7-0 in that game.
Fully
Don't sweat
prepared to
it,
take
right?
the Bucks live after Jacoby Brissett goes up 7-0.
I'm going to get that helmet that someone claimed isn't in here. What is it? Instant death?
Yeah, instant double death.
Oh, Jesus. All right, I'm rummaging. Face mask? It has a face mask. I have the Saints.
They are a 9-point dog on the road.
Red rifle, though. Hope I get him again.
Make no mistake about it.
Oh, a good rummage, Dano. I got a face mask. Oh, God. Patriots. Is it 1 o'clock, Kirk?
No, it's primetime Kirk.
Yes!
The Patriots 3-point underdog Thursday night against primetime Kirk.
Bill Belichick going up against primetime Kirk.
I got the Falcons. I'm throwing it back. They are at the Commanders, and they are a 4-point dog. And now I've got the Titans. They're a 1.5-point dog at home against the Bengals.
Mike Vrabel home underdog?
Yeah. That's good. That's as good as gold.
That's good. to
I would urge you to hunt down the Big Suey podcast today, where John Skipper and David Sampson are talking about a number of different sports business issues, leading off with Bob Iger returning to Disney, which was a seismic power move in the world of entertainment, to see that Disney, which over the pandemic was getting hit with cruise ships and movies and theme parks, losing a ton of money and making up a lot of the money through getting in the streaming game, making up a gap that I did not think, and my friends who know things about these things didn't think that Netflix would give up the gap as quickly as they did, because Disney Plus and others got into that game.
Meanwhile, even though they make up all the ground with Netflix, they still lose a ton of money on streaming.
Content is expensive. You've heard me say before here of Meadowlark Media, do not start a business during a pandemic.
You could just you don't have to include the pandemic. Just don't start a business. It's tough.
And things are shakier than they've been in the economy and elsewhere. And the competition right now, as television and entertainment change forever, make it a marketplace that feels unstable. A lot of these companies are being taken over by other companies who are then firing a bunch of people because they don't much care about whether the content is good or not. They're looking at numbers on a page and losses, and that's how you find that Batgirl gets shelved and is only showing on in a parking lot somewhere in Los Angeles, so that people who made Batgirl and poured their lives into the making of Batgirl don't have it just put somewhere and locked away because some accountant decided that they'd rather take a $90 million hit on paper. But as Iger does this, and as we talk all the time around here about how hard it is for athletes in their early 30s or late 30s to retire from a sport that will make sure that the rest of their life, no matter what they're doing, will not quite feel like what they did in their 20s and 30s, that you will never be able to recapture what that was. You can try it with coaching, with broadcasting, but nothing will feel like being at the center of your physical prime in athleticism, and then you have it taken away in your 30s. Why would anyone think that Bob Iger would be like, I'm good with just going away? I'm going from the most powerful person that you'll find anywhere in entertainment, and now I'm retired. And now what do? Well, I'll undermine the guy who replaces me and be hovering around there, always available in case they need me to be a savior as he gets crushed by the pandemic. And maybe I'll run for president because I need to find something like this. Or he tried to own a sports team, but Sarver wouldn't let him. So I don't know how much is going to change there with Sarver out. But how do you fill being the CEO of that place and then just going to having no power? Having no real power over when you've identified as someone who has the ego, because God almighty, those CEOs have monster egos, who's just piddling about the house with all the money in the world, but none of the relevance.
Well, you mentioned how would anybody think that he would be okay being retired, because he had pretty strong quotes. Part of that is because he didn't want to publicly undermine Chapek, and I understand that, but he was pretty strong and dismissive whenever he was pushed on rumors that he might return one day to the company. He, prior to this, had quite possibly the greatest foresight ever, because his reputation as CEO was a very good one. He was well liked by people that worked at that company and stockholders alike. And remember, he announced that he was stepping aside.
Perfect timing.
Right before an industry that is so heavily reliant on tourism suffered the pandemic. He actually came back somewhat for optics and to actually help guide the company through that, and announced that he'd be assisting Chapek as they went through that. But then he kind of drifted off and was doing speaking engagements. I was really surprised to see him come back, just because I had only seen the headline saying that said that he wasn't coming back at all, and it would be ridiculous to consider these things. But I imagine when you go from that, John's actually a good person to weigh in on that, even though it's not exactly the same because he never retired. But to go from having all of that power and being one of the more, it's not easy to be recognized as a CEO. And I think Iger was one of the more recognizable CEOs on the planet. Sure, there was obviously something that drew him back to that job. I'm sure the money helps, but maybe something in his life was missing over the last few years.
I don't know when it is that you were reading those quotes or when it is that they were given, but I will tell you that most people who have done a thing for their entire life feel an initial freedom that feels like an exhale and is wildly liberating. But as the late Edwin Pope of the Miami Herald used to say, everybody loves Saturday until every day is Saturday. When you don't have anything to do, you don't have purpose. He's got such a distorted worldview as someone who makes billion-dollar decisions daily. To go from that, there's only so much golf that you can play.
But like you said, though, he was trying to pursue all of these other things, including a potential run for president. Bill Simmons reported on his podcast that he was among the groups that was going to be interested in the Suns, and that Robert Sarver thought that, ESPN did a hit job on him, and he blames Bob Iger for it. It's sort of basically similar to the Jeff Bezos Washington Post situation that, you did this so you can buy my team from me. I'm not going to allow you to do that. So he very clearly has tried to do other things, but this seems to be the most comfortable thing. And he might look at, okay, I laid out this vision for what Disney could be. They can move into the streaming age. They have 230 million global subscribers, but they lose a ton of money still on streaming because the amount they have to pay for content. This is a guy who went out and acquired Marvel and went out and acquired Star Wars and all these things for Disney. He laid out this vision, and he must be like, if I were just there, I could have executed the vision better than this guy did. And it's very easy to do that from the sidelines, especially when you compared it to sports. It's a little bit different in that you don't really lose your mental acumen over the course of time, right? Like, in theory, retiring is not inevitable. Aging is not inevitable in the job that he's doing, other than sort of the amount of time that it takes from you. But he will theoretically have learned from his 40 years in business how to run that company better than the person who's there now.
I'm sure you may have picked up in your life in broadcasting a story here or there, but Iger was generally well-liked. I mean, one of the main Google results on Bob Iger is people often ask, is Bob Iger a nice guy? And the answer is yes. Google just says, yeah, he's a nice guy. I saw people that are just fans of Disney that frequent the parks sharing this story on social media, cheering, yay. They're not stockholders. The vibes around Chapek were totally different than they were for Iger. He was beloved.
We've talked in sports about how few guys and women get the ending that they want. Usually you get the uniform pulled off you. You don't get to be fountain of youth forever. Someone else decides the ending that you get. And as I look at Iger, he could not have gotten the dismount any more right on the timing, right before the pandemic, as if he knew what was going to happen, as if he knew that theme parks weren't going to be a place that anyone could visit. Cruise ships were going to be petri dishes for disease that might get caught offshore somewhere for a month. And you couldn't go to the movie theater as movie theaters collapsed to consume his films.
The timing was so suspicious that people were talking about him actually knowing something.
I thought he knew.
It was like Dwayne Johnson breaking the Bin Laden
It's not completely
assassination.
implausible. Disney does a ton of business in China. Lockdowns were already beginning. It's not impossible that he knew.
I thought he knew. I think people in power, the people who are going to, when the apocalypse comes and zombies are rising from the sea, Iger's going to be living on another planet with Elon Musk and a bunch of other people who have all the money in the world.
Wally was in fiction. It was Bob Iger's vision of the future.
But the timing was so good that he risks becoming Michael Jordan with the Wizards now.
I mean, it's a tough business.
Oh my God!
For all of these entertainment companies right now, because they all kind of went nuts. And actually, if you look at Disney's stock price, it was at an all-time high during the pandemic, during last year, because of the amount of content that people were watching, and people wanted to invest in major streaming companies because it felt like they were going to own the entertainment business. But similar to the pay TV business, they have completely seen how difficult it is going to be because they're spending way more than they can make on subscribers.
I have diamond hands with that stock. It needs to come up.
The other thing that people simply do not realize, just because this guy has been successful as the CEO of that for so much time, is how pressurized those jobs are, how much better retirement is than whatever it is that he is now deciding to walk back into, which is an unbelievable pressure cooker. And he got out. He got the ending. He got the Disney ending, the fairy tale ending. And now he rides in on a white horse to save them. The stock price goes back up just with the announcement that he's back in charge.
Yeah, but it's got to be amazing being him right now because he's being showered with praise. The gratitude for him coming back right now is overwhelming. He's got to be loving this.
The irony of me having diamond hands with Disney.
Evan McPherson? The GOAT? He's a kicker. I mean, Tom Brady's bed's still warm. Tom Brady just left.